what would you expect to see in terms of the behavior of a CEO in the context of actually doubling revenue in 6 months?
Yeah. I'm just going to make this up.
Yeah.
I'll come up with 5. I don't know what I'm going to come up with, but with practice, y'all, you can get really fast at this. So I'll just demo a little bit. Every Friday, the CEO has let's change it. Every Monday, the CEO has a doubling the revenue meeting for 30 minutes with these 4 other people for the next 6 months. Bam, specific behavior. Weekly behavior that happens over six months. Number 2, our online data analyst submits a report about how we're doing online every Friday by 2:00 for the next 6 months. Bam. Number 3, our customer experience expert surveys our customers 20 customers once a week, so they tell us what they love about our product. That's a behavior. And then another behavior, I'll count this as 4, that person then shares the insights with the team on the Friday meeting. That's a separate behavior, but an important one.
BJ, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Absolute pleasure and privilege to have you on the show today.
So happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're so welcome, and you've brought wonderful energy already. I'm not one bit envious that you're dialing in from Maui this morning and you've just gone and rubbed it in by wearing an Hawaiian shirt, but there we go. It's I'm not envious at all in Ireland as it begins to rain. So there we go. Look, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So, BJ, what does scaling with purpose mean to you?
Wow, it's a great. You and your audience know this way better than me, so I'm going to give an amateur answer. I think it's to have more impact in the world in the way that you want to have impact. And drawing on one of my models, the Fogg behavior grid, it would be either more intensity or more duration or more frequency. That's when I think of, expanding a behavior. So I'm taking that model and applying it here. So it could be the same people with more intensity. It could be more people, or it could be more frequent in some way. In my work, the way I think about it anyway, for my work has to do with habits and designing products that are effective and help people. It's not about really reaching more people for me. It's like reaching the right people and helping them in in-depth ways. So I don't want the superficial, you can see I've kind of stopped social stuff because that's like this broad, thin layer. And I'm focusing on finding the right people to work with me, learn my stuff, et cetera, and going deep with those people. So that's, for me, scaling anyway.
Oh, I love that, actually. We've never had that before. Amplifying our impact, absolutely, but actually finding the right people in terms of those that we're impacting, because when I hear that, I'm thinking of when we impact those people positively, then the ripple just goes outwards. Those people will then impact the right people within their network, and we keep creating this kind of ripple effect, which is incredibly positive.
And let me give you an example. So almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, I made the decision to stay at Stanford and not be a full-time industry person. And the reason for that was the students who take my class or do research in my lab can then go on and impact millions and millions of lives in a way I cannot. And that's really become my game plan. It's not me being like the famous person in everybody's mind. It's me helping others reach their audiences effectively. So one of my students co-founded Instagram. One of my students leads Notion, and they just reached 100 million people, and so on. So I think through Stanford, I've been able to attract, or somehow the students find me who are ambitious in that way, and then they go off and just do amazing things.
I love that, and we're very aligned on that in terms of our approach and what we do in terms of impacting small and medium-sized enterprise leaders to scale with purpose, because ultimately they create this energy within their leadership teams, within their companies, that sends a ripple out into their communities, to society and the economy at large. And when you actually impact enough SME leaders, then ultimately these ripples start to join up, and it really positively impacts the economies that we're
Yeah.
operating within. And we're gonna speak to that today. But I just want to point out to your listeners, I think of you every morning when I wake up. Now, I'll tell you why in a moment, without that sounding creepy. Because every morning that I waken up, I say to myself, "Today is going to be a great day because I am going to make it a great day."
That's so
So
good.
something you've coined as the Maui habit, and it's great to speak to the person who is actually in my head as I waking up in the morning. Tell me, why is this impactful? I mean, you're a Stanford professor. As people are hearing that, they go, "Come on, that sounds a little bit
Yeah.
woo." You're clever guys. Why are you saying this?
Yeah. Well, as a researcher, so I'm a quantitative researcher, mostly experiment. So I did not do an experiment on the Maui habit, but there's other ways of getting insight and finding what works. And there's practice, hands-on practice. And so for me, the Maui habit was more doing it in my own life, just saying, today's going to be a great day, or it's going to be a great day as soon as I get up. And then I started sharing with people and it worked for them and others and others and others. So it wasn't like I didn't experiment and they said, okay, therefore do this. It was from practice. I'm a huge fan, by the way, of practitioners, people that have done and helped many hundreds, if not thousands of people. And this falls into that category. Why does it work? I'm not an expert on why it works, but let me make a guess here. I try to be really clear about what I know for sure and where I'm speculating. Part of it is you are setting an intention for the day. This is where I'm going. And I think that stays with you. Part of it is as you get up and say, it's going to be a great day, the very next thing that happens, if it's kind of bad or whatever, you deal with that better. It's like, oh man, today's going to be terrible and crappy, right? So you are setting yourself on an upward trajectory. So the next challenge you face, you do better. And and you build this momentum, this upward momentum. Now, to add a little bit of nuance to this, there are days that we all have, and I have, where you get up and it's like, it's going to be a hard day. It's going to be so I still say it's going to be a great day somehow. So I open the possibility that somehow it's going to be a great day, and usually it is. So I don't feel like it's a naive thing to do. It's just a few words and people should put it into practice and see if it works for them.
Yeah, I really like that. It's almost a nod to Carol Dweck's work in terms of moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, and in opening up the kind of fixed mindset of I can't, it's adding the suffix yet. So I like that today is going to be a great day somehow, even though you may have things going on in your life that may suggest it might be a little bit challenging, but it's almost the equivalent of the yet, which I like. You're also the result of my wife looking at me quite strangely when I'm brushing my teeth, because I incorporate pistol squats now into my
Good for you.
toothbrushing. So
Good.
it takes 2 minutes, and I'm pistol squatting as I brush my teeth. What is going on
What is going on?
with these little tiny habits?
Well, I'll start with the nitty-gritty and work out a little more general. Wow, good for you. And you're getting fitter, and it's not that much more effort, and it may be alleviating boredom of brushing. So it helps you be very consistent with a behavior that matters to you. And that's what the tiny habits method is all about. It's not about the size of the habit in tiny habits. The breakthrough for me in about 2010, when I was goofing around with my own habits and behavior, where I was just not doing well. And I was very worried. I mean, I'm 61 now. So what was I in 2010, in my 40s? And I just thought, I'm going down this slope and I'm not going to be able to turn this corner. By the way, you can turn the corner at any age, but I was worried. And I realized that it really wasn't about the size of the habit, but it's being very consistent. And then how do you be consistent? You make it really tiny and easy. So notice you don't have to go to the gym to do pistol squats, by the way, are terribly hard. That's a very tall bar. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. And then you need to know where this fits in your day. What does it come after? So we'll talk later, I think, about the Fogg behavior model. So what is your prompt? But in the tiny habits language, it's like, what does it come after? So after I start brushing, I will do 3 pistol squats or whatever it is. So what you're doing is you're designing a behavior you care about to be very consistent into your life. So again, it's not about how much you do, it's the fact that you do something. Now, for most people, pistol squats, I mean, I can't do a pistol squat
Yet.
yet. I aspire to that. But, just to do, so my thing, one of the things in the book, my Tiny Habits book and elsewhere, I've gone public with this, is after I pee, I will do 2 push-ups. And I've done that for years. And I can do more whenever I want. Like yesterday, I was doing 10 or 12 after each time I peed. I work mostly from home, so don't do it in public restrooms. But if I only do 2, that's fine. If I'm feeling really tired or just whatever, I just do 2 counter push-ups. But I'm still doing the habit, and I count it as a success. So what you're doing is you're being very consistent. What you're also doing, fast forward, is you are shifting, or you have shifted your identity as I'm the kind of person who works out, or I'm the kind of person who takes care of, my muscle strength or my leg strength. That identity shift, and we've measured this in Tiny Habits back in the day, way before James Clear talked about identity shift, way before others were doing it. We were studying and measuring in Tiny Habits that when people do small behaviors and feel successful, their identity shifts. And it can be very specific. I'm the kind of person who takes care of my teeth. Or it can be broader. I'm the kind of person who can keep going with good habits. That's in contrast to the identity most people have is I'm the kind of person who can't stick to habits. I'm the kind of person who gets motivated and I fall off and so on. So you can shift that identity actually very quickly. And the key is to feel successful. And the kind of I don't want to call it a miracle because I'm a scientist, but the amazing thing is the feeling of success can come from doing something very small, just 2 counter push-ups. And if you let yourself feel successful, yes, the habit wires in quickly because it's the emotion, not repetition, that creates habits, emotion, then it also shifts your identity. And then that has a larger ripple effect on your life. So I'm the kind of person who takes care of myself, bam, then throughout your day. As you come to decision points, things that are not habits, you're more likely to say, well, I'm the kind of person who takes care of myself. So therefore, I'm going to choose this to drink rather than that to drink.
And just on that, before we move on to the Fogg behavior model, should we affirm after we do something like this? Should I be affirming after the pistol squats that I'm the kind of person who maintains a healthy body and a healthy mind? Is that something I should be saying in order to invoke the emotion of feeling successful, or is it just enough to do the habit?
Yes, there's a little bit of nuance here, and I'll be brief, and we can go deeper now or later if you wanted it. So it is the emotion you feel, and you know this, but I'm re-explaining it. As you do a behavior, it's the emotion you feel that causes it to become automatic or a habit. It's not repetition. All of that stuff is hogwash, y'all. Look it up, look at it carefully. The research does not say it is repetition. So if you naturally feel successful, so let's say I use this pen for the first time and it's like, oh my gosh, my handwriting is amazing. Well, I naturally feel successful. This pen will become a habit. But on things like pistol squats and push-ups and flossing your teeth, you don't leave that to chance. You self-reinforce. And this is one of the hacks in the Tiny Habits method that I, in 2011, rolled this out. And we call it celebration. It doesn't matter what you call it. But the key is to hack your brain, basically, by allowing yourself or causing yourself to feel successful. That then makes that behavior become more automatic. That's what creates the habit. So now the nuance, so that's the principle here. Now, when you step back and look at it, it's like, oh yeah, we reinforce dogs, we reinforce kids, we get them to, we can self-reinforce. That's what we're doing here. It's not woo-woo, is we're self-reinforcing and we're doing it deliberately. Now, the nuance here, now I have Tiny Habits coaches that I help train, and they're amazing and they're wonderful. And this is a little bit in the Tiny Habits book, but really with the coaches in the coach community. They know this very well. The question is, Do you reinforce at the beginning of the habit or at the end of the habit or in between? And the answer is it can be all of those. Okay. Now, for pistol squats, if it's very, very short, and if there's a mirror, you could be looking in the mirror and you could be reinforcing the whole time. Like, good for me. And I would probably, for me anyway, it's like, good for me. This will help me continue to be number one on hydro in my age category, right? It could be broader, like, good for me. This helps me be healthy. But I have this thing about hydro, and quietly, I mean, nobody follows me on hydro really. So it's just this quiet pride of like, yeah, I want to not only be the best in my 60s, but I want to be better than anybody in their 50s. And I want to be, so I would be thinking that like these pistol squats are going to help me achieve this thing. And so connect the habit with something that matters to you. And the more specific it is and the stronger that aspiration is, the stronger the feeling, the emotion you can create, and then the faster the habit wires in. Now, for longer habits, like going to the gym, celebrate the initiation, the start. Because if you wait till after an hour and then you go, good for me, after you work out, you want to reinforce the onset of the behavior. If it's a longer one, if you want it to be longer, but for something short, like 2 push-ups, flossing 1, 2 pistol squats, you can do it at the beginning, during, and because it's just very, very short in time. So that's kind of a nuance, maybe too detailed for right now.
No, I'm fascinated, and we haven't even got into the meat of the podcast yet, and I'm already my mind is ticking over here because there's a couple of things I've just realized. Actually, you've had more impact in my life than actually I initially thought about coming on to this, because you're the reason now I brush my teeth with my left hand. And you're the reason now that I floss my teeth as well. I'm just reflecting back. I have your wonderful book here, Tiny Habits. For those who are listening, you won't be able to see BJ's book, Tiny Habits. I encourage you all to go out and get a copy of this. Regular listeners to this show, I have no doubt, will have already consumed this. But for those who are not familiar with it, go and get this book. It's a game changer. I'm going to come to celebration a little bit later, and before we move to my first question, actually,
Okay.
I want to just pick up on the point that you made about kind of habits aren't reinforced over time. It's the attachment to the emotion that we feel. So I think for lots of us, and for those listening, they'll believe that habits are reinforced after 21 days. So what you're saying is that this isn't the case.
Yeah, let me change the language a little bit, and let's not use reinforce in that statement. Um, Habits do not form because you are repeating a behavior. That, and people have said 21 days and the 66-day thing came out. That is hogwash. Go back to the original study, especially if you're a researcher, and look at that. So it's not sheer repetition. It's just like, I'll use a quick analogy. This may not work. So if you find that people that go to the gym frequently end up being fitter, you're like, great, just go to the gym. Just go frequently. And people go to the gym, sit in the lounge, eat donuts, drink orange juice, watch TV. No, it's what you do, what you experience at the gym. Same thing with habits. It's not just doing a behavior. It's your emotional reaction. And if you have a positive one, subtext, or if the behavior alleviates an anxiety or a stress, right? Which is a net gain in positive emotions. That's what social media is doing. That's what smoking does for some people. You go from a negative state to a less negative state. That's a reinforcer. So in Tiny Habits, you focus on the positive. You have a way to help yourself feel successful in the moment as a way to self-reinforce. The stronger that feeling is, the faster the habit wires in. So there is no set number of days. That's just not the right way to think about habits. And to understand that it's emotions. And once you understand that, you look around at other aspects of the world, including products that have become habits. Yeah, they become habits not because you repeated it, because they helped you feel successful. They caused an emotion inside of you.
That has changed a belief that I had. Now, I know I picked it up in Tiny Habits, but I keep defaulting to this kind of 21-day narrative that has been very, very well socialized. We've teased the listeners with the Fogg behavior model a number of times now throughout the conversation. I pulled a statement that you made out of Tiny Habits. I, you encourage people to see the world through the behavior model lens. Now, that is a bold statement. So, why do you encourage people to see the world through the behavior model lens? And maybe before we get into that, explain to our listeners actually what the behavior model is.
Okay. We will start with the explanation. And I'm going to show a little bit in, this is the US version of the Tiny Habits
Oh,
book.
very good.
And I spiral bind mine copy. And I do this for my coaches and other people.
I'm jealous now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard. So the behavior model looks like this. A behavior, that's B, happens when these three things come together: motivation, ability, and prompt. So for those of you not watching, the way the Fogg behavior model is written out is B equals MAP. Now, it's not technically an equation, it's a model. But a behavior happens when those three things converge at the same moment. You're motivated to do that behavior. You have the ability to do the behavior. And there's a prompt. There's something that says, do this behavior now. If any one of those three things are missing, the behavior will not happen. Now, why does it just give you like a superpower if you use this model in your everyday life, your personal life, your work life, and so on? It's because, number one, you can analyze and understand why a behavior happened or did not happen. Okay, so let's say that last night you're watching some TV series and you ended up eating like a ton of chocolates from a box. And you're like,
it's been known to happen.
No, it happens. Well, the behavior is eating chocolates. The motivation is, oh, maybe you were seeking comfort or relief that a chocolate would give you, or you're just seeking the taste. The ability was there because you had the box of chocolates, and the prompt was there because the chocolates were sitting there. So it's like, well, okay, it was so easy, and the prompt was there, and the motivation was there. Therefore, I ate the chocolates. That's why I did. So you don't have to beat yourself up and say, I lack discipline, I lack willpower, I'm a bad person. No, look at that behavior and go, okay, that's why it happened. It is straightforward. I was prompted to do something that was really easy and I had motivation to do. Now, you can then design behaviors out of your life by saying, how do I remove the prompt? Well, maybe I take the box of chocolates and I put them in my trunk or something like that. Or how do you make it harder to do? Maybe you, like in our home, there's no ice cream in this home. And also no bread, because we love ice cream and we love bread. And if it's easy to do, we're going to eat it. And so it's like, make that really hard to do. Yeah, we could drive to the store and get it, but anyway. So the behavior model lets you understand why a behavior happened. And that could even for like a product or service. Why is this company just killing it with getting people to enroll? Well, they're tapping into their customer motivation. They're making it easy, and there's a prompt. So you can analyze and understand that. And then you can also design for your own personal life or business purposes. Like, here's the behavior. Is it tapping into motivation, ideally that already exists? And how do you make it really easy to do? And is there a prompt, right? And you can design those things. Now, everybody listening, you've done those things before in your life, but maybe accidentally, right? But now with the behavior model, you can be very deliberate about it. And there's just so many examples where we could go on this, Brendan, but I'll stop there. So the behavior model helps you with analysis, so understanding of behavior, and then design, so you can get the behaviors to happen yourself or others that you want to have happen.
And just before we go any further, is there any hierarchy to the actual components of behavior in terms of motivation, ability, and prompt? For example, take the chocolate example. So ordinarily, I'm not motivated to eat chocolate, but if I'm sitting watching a movie with my wife and my wife has a box of chocolates sitting there.
Yeah.
So now the ability to have the chocolates is very much present. And the prompt might be that my wife has just literally taken a sweet out of the box and said
Yeah.
and invited me to have one. Ordinarily, I wouldn't be motivated. But now, with that invitation, given the ability in the prompt is quite high, my motivation is typically low, but it's likely that I'm going
Yeah.
to have the chocolate.
Yeah. So let me map that scenario to the behavior model, and I'll get back to your question. It's a great question. So the written version is B equals MAP, but there's a graphical version. And you all, if you're not watching the video, or even if you are, you probably want to go to behaviormodel.org to see the visual model. It's really important because it shows the relationship between motivation and ability. And it looks like this. There's this curved line. And if something is really easy to do, even though your motivation is low, if it's really easy to do, when prompted, you will do it. And Brendan, that's exactly the scenario you described. So on the flip side, if something is hard to do, you have to have high levels of motivation to do it. So that's the problem with like, oh, I'm gonna work out for an hour a day from now on. Well, that's hard to do. Your motivation level has to be high. And so that's what this curved line in the model is showing. It's that relationship. Now, in words, it's this. The easier the behavior, the less motivation you need to do that behavior. Now, that's for good or bad. I mean, it's good, like flossing one tooth. You don't need to be super motivated, right? But also the chocolates, the easier it is, the lower the motivation level. On the flip side, the harder the behavior, the higher the motivation needs to be. So if I take the ice cream, or if we have no ice cream in the home, and we have to go to the store to get it, my motivation has to be really high. It's like, let's get in the car, go to the store, deal with all that, come back. So, and usually it's not, it's like, I'll just do something else. I'll eat this coconut yogurt instead or something. So that a relationship, to my knowledge, so this is 2007 behavior model. I brought that forth to the world. That we know that's how it works from our everyday experience. If something's really hard, we have to have high levels of motivation, et cetera. But there hasn't been a model or an understanding of behavior that showed those are kind of like teammates. You can trade off, have more or less of one or the other. Now, to your question, is there a hierarchy of priority? I'll just fast forward. The first answer would be very practical. Don't try to manipulate your own motivation, at least in the long term. That's very hard to do. Focus on making behaviors you want easy to do. So go for the ability one. That's what you have a lot of control over. Behaviors that you want yourself to do, make those really easy. The behaviors that you don't really want yourself to do, make those difficult. So that's where you have some control. Because the prompt to eat ice cream, you may not have control over that. You're sitting there watching a movie and you think ice cream would be nice. Bam, that's a prompt. You can't control that. Your motivation is like, I really love ice cream. You're not going to be able to control that. So you have more control over the ability component. And this is true for helping people you love or people in your workplace. For the behaviors you want them to do or that will be good for them, make those really, really easy to do, because then their motivation can be relatively low and they'll still do it. Now, answer number 2. If you're working on customer engagement or daily habits or lasting change, the only thing that works in the long run is helping people do what they already want to do. And I call that Fogg maxim number 1. Help people do what they already want to do. Help people do what they're already motivated to do. What's very difficult is to get somebody motivated to do something on a consistent basis they don't want to do. Okay, so when you look at products and services that have won, they all do that. They're not convincing people who care about HRV. They're not, if you're an HRV technology company, you're not out there convincing people that don't care about their health to do that's not your customer. You go to people that want to track and improve their HRV, okay? So in that sense, motivation now is the top of the hierarchy. Don't create a product or service where you're trying to convince people to do things they don't want to do. Bam, we're helping people do what they already want to do. And that statement brings in the other aspects of the behavior model. We're helping them by making it easy. We're helping them by providing a prompt. So in that statement, so I call Fogg maxim number one, help people do what they already want to do. It's got the ability component in there. Notice you're not manipulating ability. You're aligning the behavior with a motivation that person already has. And then you make it easy. That's the ability component. And you make sure there's a prompt for that. So two different answers, two different hierarchies, but hopefully that isn't confusing to people. And hopefully it's practical.
Very practical. Now let's take it up a gear. So
Okay.
I said at the outset, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small to medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So just to set the context, because I want then to invite you to apply the model to this. And
Yeah.
there are 5.6 million small to medium-sized enterprises in the UK. We only have stats for the UK, courtesy of Sherry Coutu and the work she's doing at the ScaleUp Institute. 5.6 million small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK. They contribute 2.3 trillion pounds worth of revenue to the UK economy, about half of the overall, the total UK GDP. And 1.3 trillion of that 2.3 trillion is coming from 28,000 companies, 0.5% of the total SMEs. And those 28,000 companies are the scale-ups. Now, what we want to do is actually turn the dial on the number of scale-ups, because the impact, the positive impact they're making on our community, society, economies at large is disproportionately positive. Now, what the ScaleUp Institute's research found was that actually lack of ambition of the leader, so we can say lack of motivation of the leader, was cited as the single greatest impediment as to why companies don't scale. Now, what we found coaching leaders through our program is that actually that's quite a sweeping statement. We believe that people who go into business are generally motivated people, but actually they get to a certain point in their business where they get stuck. One is ignorance, in terms of they don't know how to move to the next level, and the other is unchallenged limiting beliefs, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of rejection, all of those things which happen at a certain point in the business. And we want to kind of motivate more leaders out there to scale with purpose. So this is why I'm fascinated with the model. We created our own ScaleX 10 principle framework, which is basically the roadmap, the guide to make the ability component of the Fogg behavior model easier, so we could kind of remove the ignorance piece.
I see the word enable there in your background. There we go. That's ability.
Exactly. So how could we apply the model, given the context and the importance of this, moving from the kind of little tiny habits to something that has the potential to make a seismic impact? What can we do, BJ?
Yeah. Well, it comes down to understanding what behaviors will help you achieve what you want to achieve. In this case, it's scaling of some sort. Now, I can't tell you, Brendan, or tell the people listening to this, like, here's the exact behavior for you, because it's going to be different. I'm not an expert on your company or how your industry works or whatever, but that's what you need to do. So what's the mistake is just like, I'm going to motivate myself to scale. So motivating something abstract does not work. It just makes you feel frustrated. Okay, you need to focus on a specific behavior and make it easy and make sure there's a prompt. So let me say that again, because the old traditional way that does not work is, here's this abstract thing, I'm going to motivate myself to this abstract thing. This is very much like New Year's resolutions and many things. So that's taking the M of the behavior model and just trying to but there's not a specific behavior. It's just, we're going to motivate myself to something abstract. Whereas in my work, I call behavior design. So behavior design is the larger umbrella. Underneath that is Tiny Habits method. Underneath that is a set of methods for business. Just your audience is exactly, I mean, this is my kind of people. I grew up starting my own businesses as a kid because that's how my family was. And I made many mistakes and I've had successes and so on. So yeah, you're my people here. And so if you can understand what are the behaviors I need to do, one-time behaviors, and also behaviors I repeat that will be habits or routines, then you can design for those. Now, how do you get to that? How do you understand what are the behaviors that you or your team need to do? Don't just guess. So in my work, we're outside of Stanford, where I teach and train and work with innovators and companies. There's a systematic way, so you don't have to guess on what are the behaviors. Okay, so I'll just go quickly through an example. This will be very not complete, but let's say, hey, we want to double our revenue in 6 months. That's what we're shooting for. Now, I'm not saying that's the right thing. Maybe somehow, I don't know how you come up with it. I'm just going to use it as an example.
It's a great example because actually, technically, scaling is a doubling of revenue every 3 years, but doubling in 6 months is quite aggressive.
Right.
But it's an example that we can relate to.
And in tiny habits, you go small so you can succeed all the time, but you can have a huge aspiration. We're going to double our revenue in 6 months. So say you're working with 2 or 3 teammates. Like, are we clear? What do we mean by that? Is that just incoming? Does that mean we reduce costs or whatever? Just get clear. That's the first step in behavior design. Get clear on what you're shooting for. And it could have been double our customers. It could be many other things.
And sorry to interject, BJ, because you've been very deliberate there with the word aspiration as opposed to goal.
Goal is an ambiguous word. So because I'm a scientist and that kind of person, I don't like using words that are ambiguous like goal. So in behavior design, we use the word either aspiration or outcome. Now, in this case, double our revenue in 6 months, that's more of an outcome. Either one is a fine starting point. Either one is fine. So step 1, let's all get clear on what we're shooting for. Step 2, in behavior design, and my methods are called magic wanding. And so there's a very structured way to do this that I won't go into. And you literally, if you can, you have these magic wands. And I've got one in the drawer, I won't go pull it out. And you say, if we could wave a magic wand and get anyone to do any behavior, who would do what that would help us double our revenue in 6 months? What would we have the CEO do? What behavior? What would we have our advisory board members do? What behavior? What would we have the journalist in our hometown do? Behavior. What would we have our existing customers do? So there's a way to structure and systematic. So then you generate 60, and this is going to sound ambitious, but this works. You can come up with 60 or 80 behaviors by following this method I call magic wanding. And then let's say you have 60 behaviors. Then the next step is I'm going to skip over a step, which is taking those and rewriting them so they're very crispy and making sure they're actually behaviors. That's called crispification. New word. That's step 3.
So let's just recap. We've got the outcome very clearly defined, very specific. Yeah. The doubling of the revenue within 6 months. Yeah. Then we move on to the magic wanding, which is having a conversation to discern the behaviors of those people. Who are these people within our team, or can they be outside of our team? But
doesn't matter. You're looking for breadth here, and it's actually not a conversation. It is a structured way of brainstorming. So it's not a typical brainstorm. It's a very specific way where you crank out so many ideas. And you're just going for breadth here. You're not going for quality. And you include crazy ideas. That's why I call it magic wanding. If we can magically get anybody to any behavior. So yeah, that's step 2. Step 3, crispification. Won't go into that. But it's just making sure those things from step 2 are actually behaviors, because often they're not. That's fine, because you're being creative in step 2. Step 3 is like, let's edit those, make sure they're behaviors. And then step 4 is what I call focus mapping. A more general term is behavior matching, where you take those 60 behaviors and you prioritize them. And you prioritize them in 2 dimensions. And there's a few ways to do this. I talk about it some in the Tiny Habits book, but for business purposes, you really need more in the Tiny Habits book. But the two dimensions are impact of these 60 behaviors, and you sort them ideally as a team from very high impact, very effective at helping us double our revenues in 6 months, and the ones that are not. So you don't think of feasibility, you think of impact and effectiveness. Once you're done with that, then you shift gears and you think of, can we get people to do this behavior? So now you get realistic. And it's a two-dimensional landscape, ideally. So then you slide things side to side and you move things to the right. It's like, yeah, we can get people to do this. We can get the CEO to do this. We can get existing members to do this. And then things that you can't on the left, and there's going to be things in the middle. And so at the end of that focus mapping step, number 4, you look in the upper right-hand corner, and those are the behaviors you design for, and you forget all the rest. Okay, so you might find 3, here are the 3, and we call them golden behaviors, and you take the other 57, you put them aside for now. And then for those 3 golden behaviors, it's like, okay, how do we make these easy? And how do we prompt those behaviors? So it's a system. So I 5 minutes ago, I said, do not guess, because you don't have to guess. You can go through this systematically. And especially if you work with your team where you reach consensus. So you don't have to then later you're not arguing. It's like, hey, we agreed and we together derived. These are the 3 things we're shooting for in order to double our revenues. Next step is you put it into practice and you troubleshoot if you need to tweak some things and so on. So there's a more nuance. The full-on training I do is 16 hours spread over the course of about 6 weeks. So I spend about 6 minutes. There's more, but that is hopefully gives people a sense of it's a system and it's a process. And the behavior model is critical to that. Once you have behaviors, so the first 4 steps are just figuring out what are the behaviors. Then when you have those, then you apply the behavior model and design for them.
Let's run through an example. Take the CEO's role. A lot of people listening to the show will be CEOs, will be leaders of businesses, entrepreneurs, founders. So in the example that you've laid out, the outcome here is the doubling of revenue within 6 months. We're magic wanding. What would you expect to see in terms of the behavior of a CEO in the context of actually doubling revenue in 6 months?
Yeah. I'm just going to make this up.
Yeah.
I'll come up with 5. I don't know what I'm going to come up with, but with practice, y'all, you can get really fast at this. So I'll just demo a little bit. Every Friday, the CEO has let's change it. Every Monday, the CEO has a doubling the revenue meeting for 30 minutes with these 4 other people for the next 6 months. Bam, specific behavior. Weekly behavior that happens over six months. Number 2, our online data analyst submits a report about how we're doing online every Friday by 2:00 for the next 6 months. Bam. Number 3, our customer experience expert surveys our customers 20 customers once a week, so they tell us what they love about our product. That's a behavior. And then another behavior, I'll count this as 4, that person then shares the insights with the team on the Friday meeting. That's a separate behavior, but an important one. And I'll pick an odd one too. And this is a one-time behavior. So notice some of them are repeated and some of them are one-time. Our CEO invites the top journalist in our field to go golfing on a beautiful golf course. Bam. So it didn't say that accepts, the CEO invites. So then somebody helping the CEO says, okay, how do I make it easy for our CEO to invite? What's the prompt? Oh, we figure out who it is. We pre-write the email. We sit down and say, okay, here's the text, send this now, because the CEO's got a lot going on. And then it happens, right? So those would be 5 things. I don't know if they're great things, but you'd say you come up with 60 things like that. And then you prioritize them. You're going to have some real surprises and some real breakthroughs. So again, you're not guessing. You are going through a system to figure out what are those behaviors that will help us achieve this aspirational outcome.
Can anyone do this, or is this something that is this a system that people have to be coached on? You say that you train people over a course of
Yeah.
16 hours. Do you have material on this, BJ,
Yeah.
that we can point people to on your website or?
To be very good at it, you probably, yes, you do need to do some training. But I'm hoping, even through this, I'm always about providing value, that people go, okay, I get it. There's a system and you can kind of do it. The 16 hours is like the Rolls Royce, the gold standard. We have a smaller course, and then we just launched an online course that's not expensive, and it's 6 hours. And I have probably 800 hours of videos of me teaching, hundreds and hundreds. Vimeo library I've had to pay for all this storage. And so we grabbed the best little like segments from the various teaching things and put them together in this course. And it's working really well. People, we did a little measure last week on people I've trained, and their confidence in designing for behavior change more than doubles. And most things like, oh, is it a 3 and now I'm at a 9 or something like that. But to be conservative, like I like to be. So the answer is, yeah, I mean, if you don't have the resources, re-listen to that segment and try to do that, and you will make progress, right? If you do have some resources, go how you can. We also gave out, because August was my birthday month. I turned 61, yay.
You do
We
not
gave
look
out
61, my friend. So whatever tiny habits you're doing, they're definitely working.
um, we gave out scholarships because my birthday month. My colleague Stephanie, I said, let's give out scholarships. So we did. And these are people that really cannot afford even the online courses. And it was such a great experience hearing from them and then what they're doing in the world. And we're doing it again. We're going to give out scholarships again. We just announced the winners. But we'll do it again. So I don't know. I really don't, like you probably. My thing is to have huge impact on the world. And I do that by helping other people learn how behavior works and learn how to design for behavior change. So I do not want money to be a limiting factor. There is some time you got to there's practice and and that's in 16 hours of training. It's very hands-on, very practical, etc. So you come out and you're a master at moderating these methods and getting it done. But the money for me is not the thing, it's impact in the world. Now, I'll say one more thing. I've not said this publicly. Maybe I should not say this.
Go.
For whatever reason, I looked at the top 3 selling books on Amazon this morning, and this is probably the US, maybe it's the world. All 3 books reference me and my work. And I was like, because I knew these books were talking about me and this and that, and whatever. And it's like, how weird is that? I probably shouldn't be sharing this because all 3 books talk about my work and share, but all 3 books make some mistakes too in my work in describing it. I was like, I don't know how to feel about this. But my point is, this stuff works. It works. And stop guessing, stop being not confident. You can get confident and you can have a system.
Oh, I love this. BJ, I want to consider how we could integrate the model into the work that we do. So I'm going to share with you what we do whenever we invite people into our 12-month Scaling Accelerator program or ScaleX Accelerator program. All of the workshops are aligned to our 10 principles. Big part of the work is up front. The very first principle is psyche, really understanding, getting the person to understand themselves, become aware of themselves. We talk about scaling from the inside out, and ultimately your psyche will present the frame, the boundaries that you've put on yourself in the context of how big you can actually scale this business, how big an impact you can make. The second principle is purpose and vision. And we take people through a process to ignite, to invoke significant emotion by getting people to craft a 10-year retirement speech.
Nice.
So we move them into the future and they speak such that I am now celebrating
So
having
good.
scaled this
Yeah.
business across all of these countries, here's what our customers are saying about us. Here's the impact that we've made in the world, and we literally have people in tears as they're reciting their retirement
Wow,
speeches.
yeah.
Very, very, very powerful. Then so that's the emotional piece where we kind of, whenever now use your language, when they're leaving that session, the motivation is really high. It's like they will go through a brick wall to
Yeah.
achieve what they have just cited in the retirement speech. We then help them to kind of bring that 10 years into 3 years near term using Cameron Hurl's Vivid Vision
Wow,
concept,
nice.
and they
Yeah, I love
craft their
that.
vivid
Vivid
vision.
vision. Great.
And then we bring the vivid vision down into 1 year. We carve out 4 or 5 outcomes. We say goals,
Yeah,
but 4 or 5 outcomes, big outcomes that undergird the kind of the 1 year aspiration, and then break that down into 90-day objectives and key results using the John Doerr
great.
model.
Yeah,
And it works really, really well. We create a plan to kind of execute the next 12 months that's aligned to the 3 year vivid vision, that's aligned to the 10-year moonshot, essentially the retirement speech.
so good.
So how could we integrate the behavior model into that
Yeah.
process?
So behavior model and also some methods from behavior design. So the model is a way of thinking, a way of understanding. The methods are ways of designing. And part of that, you can use the behavior model. I'm hearing, as you describe that, there's definite ways to do that effectively. Let me just point out two. I don't know what they are, but I'll come with something. What I heard. When people are super motivated, like they are, when they've done the 10-year thing or the vivid vision, that's the time to get them to do the hard behaviors. Or for yourself, if you know you're really motivated, say, great, let me tackle the hard things. Don't tackle the easy things, because your motivation when it's high allows you to do hard things. Do hard things. Get trained. Hire somebody. Buy the equipment you need. Redesign your space. Do these things that are hard. Because when your motivation comes down, you won't be able to do those things. So I call that the motivation wave. We're all familiar with it. But weirdly enough, in science and psychology that has never been named, as brilliant as people have been in the past, from Aristotle to William James and so on, this thing going up and down had no name. So I named it the motivation wave. So when the motivation wave is high in yourself or your customers or your colleagues or your spouse, get them to do the hard things. That could be a commitment. It could be a decision. It could be spend money. It could be put effort, etc. So that's one thing I'm hearing. Number two, when it comes down to the actionable stuff, make that even more specific. Use magic wanding to come up with what actions, what behaviors will help me get here, and just flow through part of the behavior design steps. Make sure really specific, and don't guess. You can prioritize through the focus mapping step to really hone in on the ones that will have impact and you can actually get yourself to do. So as you're describing it, Brenton, I'm just seeing how the methods in the model what you're doing is great, but I think it can strengthen even further and make it more practical. And, you're giving people the how-to. You're not, people want to succeed, but you're giving them a how-to and giving them encouragement. That's where I see the inspire to go down this how-to path in the face of fear and anxiety, right? And that's a demotivator. So I'm afraid, but you are giving them encouragement and you're getting them above the action line to take these actions. And that is super important.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to explore this further. And I always do a wrap up with my co-founder, Claire, who's just an incredible lady. And I know Claire will pick this up. We go into the companies after we've stepped and coached the leaders through a process to craft their moonshot, to craft their retirement speech, to also build out their vivid vision. We host a session where they stand up in front of their team and they communicate
Wow.
their vivid vision. It's very, very powerful.
Great.
And then we facilitate a session with their teams to help plan a, a way to execute on the vivid vision that the leader has just actually communicated. And I feel that actually, just as you're speaking, that that's the session in which we can incorporate then the behavior mapping exercise to really understand what behaviors will have to be in place in order to ensure that these objectives and key results are actually met. So brilliant. I love this. Before we move on to the close, you mentioned something at the outset, which you've highlighted before is really, really important to actually ensuring the efficacy of behavior change, which is celebration. So something we do,
or the feeling of success. Let's call it the feeling of success.
okay,
That's a better category.
yeah,
That's the broader category.
and I really buy into this, because something that we encourage our leaders to do, and something we do within our own team, is on a Monday morning we have our calibration meeting, and on a Friday we have our wins of the week, and everyone within the team at the end of the week shares 3 wins from that week. So is that something we should do? Is that something we should do more often? What should that look like? In terms of actually really internalizing that feeling of success.
In some of the wrap up, you gave me here's some closing questions. We're headed that way. So I think one of the most important things you can do is to help people feel successful. And that includes helping yourself feel successful, everybody. That's your kids, your spouse, your colleagues, your boss, your business partners. That feeling, if you help people feel successful, that builds the relationship. It brings you closer to them, brings them closer to you. It also motivates them to engage with you more. And it also helps them overcome fear and anxiety. There is this whole year in training my Tiny Habits coaches. So we have, I believe, the best habit coach community in the world. We have hundreds of coaches. I help train them. All my trainings this year on helping people feel successful for those reasons and others. But you have to do it in a way that's sincere, and it's different for different people, okay? For me, rowing on the hydro in the 1-minute race row, if I'm not number 1, I don't feel successful, because that's me right now. For other people, just doing a race might be it. So help people feel successful. That's Fogg maxim number 2. There's only 2 maxims that I've talked about. But how you do that is nuanced. And so it's not always the same thing for everybody. And over time, that thing may change, okay? So double thumbs up, like, should you do more of that? Yeah, but do it in the right ways.
You've touched on the close, and I feel this is an apt time to move into the close. Is there anything before we do in relation to supporting our listeners to scale with purpose in the context of all of the work that you've done, the incredible work that you've done, BJ, and the value that you've brought to the world? And I'm delighted, and I applaud you for being represented in the top 3 books. It's right.
It's so weird. It's like, what?
You're too modest.
I am not perfect at helping people feel successful, including helping myself feel successful, but I've gotten a lot better. So obsessed with that, everybody. It's game changer. It's game changer. I'm going to give a quick tip here. I shouldn't do this. With your spouse or your kids, here's one way you help them feel successful. When they make a statement, just say, "You're right." Full stop. Okay, only if you can say it sincerely. Don't say, "You're right, but." Say, "You're right." So this is a very specific technique at Stanford. I'll do some research on it to validate it, but people are doing it. So that's one way, especially for spouses, to just say, "You're right." Try it and see what happens. Okay, next. Next piece of advice to scale is focus, 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 focus. Focus. What do you offer to who? And just make that as focused as you can be. I've worked with a lot of students at Stanford, a lot of entrepreneurs, and fast forward to today, man, just the narrower your focus, the more chance you will have to succeed. You can broaden your focus later. Look at everybody that's huge. Google didn't start with all their products. They started with search. That's it. Facebook didn't start with all these things. They started with this just simple way of sharing. Instagram won in face of all their competition because they focused very, very tightly what their product was and who their customer was. They wouldn't. So focus, focus, focus. And then the last thing, which is a different kind of thing, very practical. Don't beat yourself up, y'all. This is part of helping yourself feel successful. I have two mantras that are habits of mine. One is you learn things when you learn things. So when it's like, crap, why didn't I know this about HRV? Why didn't I know this about posting on wherever? I don't beat myself up. I just go, oh, you learn things when you learn things and let it go. Okay. And the other is for yourself, but also others. I have a mantra that goes, everyone does the best they can. Nobody tries to screw up. Everyone does the best they can. Nobody tries to screw up. And that gives me a lot of compassion for the person on the street who's not, going on a green light, the person that's checking me out at the grocery store for a spouse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be kind of a different thing, but I think it really helps you when you don't beat yourself up and when you have compassion for other people, you're going to be much more effective in your life, but also in your business.
Amazing. Without asking you, you have just shared with us the three incredible timeless takeaways, I feel. So I'm not going to prompt you for anything further. If there's one habit that has been a game changer in your life, what would you say that is, BJ?
There's a lot of them, but I'm going to go back to the Maui habit. It's starting every day with, it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day. I'd have to pick that. I mean, it's so simple. But it just starts all my days in the right direction, and it just changes how I react to things. And it just, for reasons we talked about earlier on, I think it's that one. And that's why I give a TED Talk on it. And the TED Talk was in Maui. And so to acknowledge Maui and just to make it unique, I called it the Maui habit. So of all the things I could have talked about in a TED Talk, it's that one. So I'm going to pick that one. It's going to be a great thing.
Brilliant. And we'll put a link to that incredible TED Talk. Folks, watched by more than 2 million people on this planet. You have to watch this TED Talk. It's incredible. BJ, what's next for you?
I have many things. So I use focus mapping and prioritization. At Stanford, I'm part of a group now for about a year called Lifestyle Medicine. And within that group, I work on social connection. There's 6 different areas. And within that, I'm really focusing on helping people help others feel successful to build. So if I want to get really granular, social connection matters. And one of the most accessible ways for us to not have distant relationships, those don't help us be happy. It could help in business, but to be happy and healthy, it's the close relationships. And it's helping, shining a spotlight on the power that you give creating a stronger relationship by helping others feel successful. So that's on the Stanford side. On the Tiny Habits side, it's finding the right people who want to become Tiny Habits coaches and get trained thoroughly. And it's supporting and it's helping those people become the top experts in the world on habits. And the community is wonderful and awesome. My sister runs that, and she just called me a little while ago, so I probably need to respond to that. And then the third thing on the behavior design side, we talked about this earlier, it's finding the people who are doing good things in the world. Not the bad things, not the more soda, more candy. And I mean, Juul, the vaping company, called me. It's like, I'm not working with you. But it's finding people doing the good things in the world and helping them learn and apply the methods of behavior design so they can have big impact in the world.
Amazing. BJ, if people want to find out a little bit more about your incredible work, then where best to reach you?
I have too many websites, but the one, just go to bjfogg.com, bjfogg.com. That's Not my best website, but it's a little bit of a springboard into other stuff. Yeah.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I want to thank you, my friend, not only for positively impacting my life and in my morning routine, my morning habits. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today. I love your energy, your warmth, your humility, your intellect, your ability to really communicate in an impactful way. Thank you for showing up today.
Okay.
I wish you every success with everything you're doing. I look forward to staying in touch. So, BJ, take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been just super fun and a delight to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much.